The Grand Hall of Ascension on Zyrex Prime buzzed with anticipation. Thousands of alien dignitaries from across the galactic hegemony filled the cavernous space, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of colors, shapes, and textures. Floating orbs of bioluminescent gas pulsed gently overhead, casting an ethereal glow on the proceedings below. At the center of it all stood Princess Zara, her iridescent scales shimmering with each movement. She cut an impressive figure, tall and regal, with 4 arms folded serenely before her. But beneath her calm exterior, a storm was brewing. The arch-counselor of the hegemony, a gelatinous being encased in a hovering exosuit, glided forward. Its voice boomed through the hall, amplified by unseen technology. Today, we witness the ascension of Princess Zora, heir to the Zyrexian throne and future guardian of the galactic hegemony. As is tradition, the princess will embark on the grand tour, visiting the 100 core worlds of our great union. A wave of approving murmurs rippled through the crowd. The arch-counselor continued, "The royal fleet stands ready, Your Highness. Each ship a marvel of our combined technological prowess. Which shall you choose for this momentous journey?" Princess Zoret took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would change everything. "I choose none of them," she declared, her voice clear and unwavering. The hall fell silent, save for a few gasps and the soft whir of translator devices struggling to confirm what they'd just processed. The arch-counselor's exosuit flickered, a sign of its occupant's distress. I beg your pardon, Your Highness." Zara lifted her chin, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces of the assembly. "You heard correctly, Arch-Counselor. I reject the royal fleet. For my grand tour, I will travel on a human vessel." Chaos erupted. Delegates leaped to their appendages, shouting in a cacophony of languages. The Zyrexian Royal Guard tensed, their photon shields humming to life. Silence. The Arch-Counselor's amplified voice cut through the din. It turned to Zara, its tone a mixture of confusion and barely concealed anger. "Your Highness, surely you jest. The humans are. They're barely more than savages. Their technology is primitive, their customs barbaric. To entrust the heir of the hegemony to such creatures is unthinkable." Zora's eyes narrowed. "Is it? And yet, these savages have achieved in centuries what took us millennia. They've survived wars, plagues, and catastrophes that would have wiped out lesser species. Their primitive technology allowed them to join our galactic community despite the vast distances between their homeworld and ours." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But more than that, they possess something our hegemony has lost: creativity, adaptability, the ability to look at a problem and see not an obstacle, but an opportunity." A low murmur spread through the hall as the delegates considered her words. Zora pressed on, her voice growing more passionate with each sentence. "We've grown complacent, set in our ways. We need fresh perspectives, new ideas. That's what this grand tour should be about. Not just showing off our power, but learning from others. And who better to learn from than the species that has consistently defied our expectations?" The Arch-Counselor's exosuit crackled with energy, a clear sign of its agitation. "This is unprecedented, Your Highness. The political ramifications alone are precisely why it's necessary," Zara interrupted. "Our treatment of humanity has been shameful. We've dismissed them, underestimated them at every turn. It's time we recognized their potential and treated them as true equals in the galactic community." As the debate raged on, a junior aide rushed into the hall, clutching a small device. He whispered urgently to the Arch-Counselor, whose exosuit changed color rapidly. "Your Highness," the Arch-Counselor said, its tone now laced with suspicion, "a human artifact has been discovered in your private quarters. Would you care to explain this? Coincidence?" Zara's expression remained impassive, but a glimmer of something, triumph, worry, flashed in her eyes. "Well," she said, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth, "it seems we have much to discuss." The Grand Hall of Ascension, once a place of ceremony and tradition, now crackled with tension and the promise of change. As Princess Zura stood her ground, one thing became clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. The news of Princess Zura's unprecedented demand spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On Zyrex Prime, the royal palace buzzed with frantic activity as officials scrambled to contain the diplomatic fallout. Meanwhile, in a nondescript office on Earth, a very different kind of meeting was taking place. Admiral Juliana Chen of the United Earth Fleet leaned back in her chair, her weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. Across from her sat a nondescript man in a plain gray suit, his features so ordinary they seemed designed to be forgettable. "So," Chen said, breaking the tense silence, "the Zyrexian princess wants a human ship. Think it's a trap, Jenkins?" The man in gray, Jenkins, allowed himself a thin smile. "Oh, it's definitely a trap, Admiral. The question is, whose trap?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "You think the princess is acting alone? Our sources suggest she's been curious about humanity for some time. But there are other players involved." Jenkins tapped a device on his wrist, and a new hologram sprang to life between them. It showed a swirling nebula, within which a space station slowly rotated. "Neutral territory," Chen mused. "They want to meet." Jenkins nodded. "In 48 hours, the hegemony is sending their top negotiator, Karlak the Inscrutable." Chen let out a low whistle, bringing out the big guns. "Who are we sending?" "You, Admiral." Chen's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? I'm a fleet commander, not a diplomat." Jenkins leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "You're also the only human alive who's met Princess Zora before." The Admiral's face paled. "How did you?" "That's not important. What matters is that you have a connection, one we need to exploit." Chen stood abruptly, pacing the small office. That was 15 years ago. A chance encounter on a remote outpost. She was just a child. A child who never forgot you, apparently. Jenkins produced a small glowing crystal from his pocket. "This was found in the princess's quarters. It's a holographic recording of you." Chen took the crystal, turning it over in her hands. Memories flooded back, a precocious young alien, full of questions about Earth and humanity. She had seemed so innocent then, so genuinely curious. But now, what's her game, Jenkins? Why now? The intelligence officer shrugged. "That's what you need to find out. But tread carefully, Admiral. The hegemony spies will be watching your every move. One wrong step, and this could turn into an interstellar incident." 48 hours later, Admiral Chen found herself aboard a sleek diplomatic shuttle, approaching the neutral space station. Through the view screen, she could see another ship docking, a massive ornate vessel that could only belong to the hegemony. As Chen made her way through the station's winding corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with hidden surveillance devices. Finally, she arrived at the designated meeting room. The door slid open, revealing a circular chamber dominated by a large round table. Seated on the far side was a tall, spindly alien with skin like polished obsidian. Tharlak, the Inscrutable, lived up to his name. Chen couldn't read any expression on his featureless face. "Admiral Chen." Tharlak's voice was a sibilant whisper. "How interesting that they would send you. One might almost suspect prior connections." Chen kept her face neutral as she took her seat. "I go where I'm ordered, Negotiator Xarlak. Shall we begin?" The alien inclined his head slightly. "Indeed. Let us discuss the princess's most unusual request." For the next several hours, Chen and Xarlak engaged in a delicate verbal dance. Proposals were made and rejected. Thinly veiled threats were exchanged, and all the while, Chen could sense the underlying currents of tension and suspicion. As the negotiations reached a critical point, a soft chime interrupted them. A holographic image flickered to life above the table. Princess Zara herself. "Honorable negotiators," the princess said, her voice calm but tinged with an undercurrent of steel, "I trust you're making progress." Chen and Tarlac exchanged glances. The game had just changed, and neither was sure of the new rules. Zara's holographic eyes seemed to bore into Chen. "Admiral, it's been a long time. I do hope you'll be the one to captain my tour vessel. After all," her lip curled in the slightest of smiles, "we have so much to catch up on." As the hologram faded, Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever was really going on here, she realized, was far bigger and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Admiral Juliana Chen stood in the cavernous docking bay of Starbase Omega, watching as her new crew filed aboard the HMS Audacity. The ship, a state-of-the-art human vessel hastily retrofitted with hegemony tech, gleamed under the harsh lights, its sleek lines a stark contrast to the bulbous alien ships surrounding it. "Quite the menagerie you've assembled, Admiral," a voice drawled behind her. Chen turned to see Jenkins, the intelligence officer's unremarkable features somehow even more forgettable than the bustling spaceport. "You're the one who approved this crew manifest," Chen replied, her eyes narrowing. "Care to explain your choices?" Jenkins smiled thinly. "Each one has a unique skill set that might prove useful." As if on cue, a cacophony of shouts and crashes erupted from the ship's boarding ramp. Chen and Jenkins rushed over to find two of the new crew members in a tangled heap at the bottom of the ramp. "I'm so sorry," exclaimed a willowy woman with wild electric blue hair. "I didn't see you there, which is ironic, really, given my speciality." She extended a hand to the man she'd bowled over, a short, stocky fellow with cybernetic implants visible at his temples. "No harm done," the man grunted, his voice carrying a strange mechanical undertone. "Though I'd appreciate it if you'd watch where you're going in the future, Dr. Tanaka." Chen pinched the bridge of her nose. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, our xenobiologist, and Marcus Quaid, expert in obsolete technology. "Try not to kill each other before we leave space dock." As Tanaka and Quaid dusted themselves off, a booming laugh drew Chen's attention. Striding down the ramp came a mountain of a woman, her dark skin covered in intricate, glowing tattoos. "Captain on deck," she bellowed, snapping a salute that managed to be both perfectly regulation and vaguely mocking. "At ease, Chief Adebayo," Chen sighed. "And I'm an admiral, not a captain." "Aye, Admiral Captain, sir." Adebayo grinned, her tattoos pulsing in what seemed to be amusement. Jenkins leaned in close to Chen. "Zendaya Adebayo, expert in alien linguistics and cultural taboos." Those tattoos, a living dictionary of every known galactic language. Before Chen could respond, a blood-curdling shriek pierced the air. A blur of motion resolved itself into a wiry man dangling upside down from an overhead beam, his face inches from Chen's. "Admiral," he exclaimed, his eyes wild. "I've recalibrated the ship's gravity plating to repel dust mites. We'll have the cleanest ship in the galaxy." Chen took a measured step back. "Thank you, Mr. Sato. Perhaps next time, inform me of such changes before implementing them." Hiroshi Sato, engineer extraordinaire and clean freak supreme, nodded enthusiastically before scampering back into the ship, muttering about air filtration systems. "Is that everyone?" Chen asked, feeling a headache building behind her eyes. "Not quite," Jenkins replied, gesturing to a solitary figure making their way across the docking bay. The newcomer moved with an eerie grace, their environment suits mirrored faceplate revealing nothing of the being inside. As they approached, Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Greetings, Admiral," came a voice like silk over gravel. "I am X-427. Tactical analysis and threat assessment are my primary functions." Chen shot a questioning look at Jenkins, who shrugged. "Best AI in the fleet. Don't worry, it's bound by all the usual ethical protocols." "Charmed," Chen muttered, before raising her voice to address the assembled crew. "All right, people. We have less than 24 hours before Princess Zora arrives. I want this ship ready for royalty. Any questions?" Tanaka raised her hand tentatively. Admiral, is it true the princess specifically requested human cuisine for the journey? Because I've been working on some hybrid recipes that I think. No experimental cooking. Dr. Tanaka. Chen cut her off. We're not starting an interstellar incident over food poisoning. As the crew filed into the ship, Chen couldn't shake a feeling of impending doom. This mismatched team of misfits and eccentrics was supposed to represent humanity to the galaxy. She could only hope that their unique skills would prove as valuable as Jenkins seemed to think. Little did she know, those skills would be put to the test sooner than anyone could have anticipated. For even as the HMS Audacity prepared for launch, unseen forces were moving in the shadows, setting in motion events that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The HMS Audacity glided through the star-studded void, its hybrid human hegemony engines humming with barely contained power. On the bridge, Admiral Chen sat rigidly in the captain's chair, her eyes fixed on the swirling, ethereal patterns of the Magellan Nebula looming before them. "Status report," she barked, tension evident in her voice. X-427's metallic tones responded promptly. "All systems nominal. Admiral, we are on course to traverse the nebula in approximately 47 minutes." Chen nodded, allowing herself a small sigh of relief. So far, the journey had been uneventful. Princess Zora had remained in her quarters, emerging only for formal dinners that crackled with unspoken tension. The crew, despite their eccentricities, had performed admirably. Perhaps this mission wouldn't be the disaster she'd feared. As if summoned by her optimism, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the bridge in an ominous glow. "What's happening?" Chen demanded, leaping to her feet. Dr. Tanaka's voice, tinged with panic, came over the comm. "Admiral, the nebula, it's alive." Before Chen could process this bizarre statement, the ship lurched violently. Through the view screen, she watched in horror as tendrils of luminous gas reached out from the nebula, enveloping the Audacity in a ghostly embrace. "Evasive maneuvers," Chen ordered, but Quaid at the helm shook his head frantically. "Controls aren't responding. Whatever that thing is, it's jamming our systems." As the crew scrambled to regain control, Princess Zora burst onto the bridge, her scales flickering with agitation. "Admiral Chen, what is the meaning of this?" Chen opened her mouth to respond, but another violent shudder rocked the ship. Sparks flew from consoles, and the lights flickered ominously. X-427, analysis, Chen shouted over the chaos. The AI's voice remained unnervingly calm. "The nebula appears to be a previously unknown form of spacefaring entity. It is currently attempting to digest our ship." A horrified silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the groaning of stressed metal. "Well," Zora said dryly, "this is certainly more excitement than I anticipated." Chen ignored the princess's sarcasm, her mind racing. "Options, people. I need options." Sato's voice crackled over the comm, punctuated by the sound of frantically tapping keys. "Admiral, I think I can reconfigure the gravity plating to emit a repulsive field, but it'll take time." "Time we don't have," Quaid muttered, his cybernetic implants flashing as he wrestled with the unresponsive controls. Suddenly, Chief Ada Bio stepped forward, her tattoos pulsing with an intense light. "Wait, I have an idea. This entity, it's communicating." All eyes turned to the linguist. "The patterns in the gas," Ada Bayo explained hurriedly. "They're similar to the Xaraxian color speech. If I can just..." She didn't finish her sentence. Instead, Ada Bayo's tattoos began to flash in a complex, mesmerizing sequence. The tendrils holding the ship seemed to hesitate, then pulse in response. "By the void," Zara breathed. "She's talking to it." For several tense minutes, Adebayo stood silent, her skin a canvas of shifting light. Then, slowly, the nebula's grasp on the ship began to loosen. "It's working," Tanaka exclaimed from her science station. "The entity is releasing us." As the Audacity drifted free, the nebula coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape. Its luminous form towered over the ship, regarding them with what could only be described as curiosity. Adebayo turned to the stunned crew, a look of wonder on her face. "It's ancient," she said softly. "Older than our civilizations. It was just lonely." Chen sagged in relief, then straightened, facing Princess Zora. "Your Highness, I apologize for." But Zara wasn't listening. The alien princess stared out at the nebula being, her eyes shining with an emotion Chen couldn't quite identify. "Magnificent," Zara whispered. "Truly magnificent." As the crisis subsided and the crew began damage assessments, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just stumbled upon something monumental. The universe, it seemed, was far stranger and more wondrous than even the hegemony had imagined. And humanity, with its adaptability and unique perspectives, might just be the key to unlocking its secrets. In the aftermath of their encounter with the living nebula, an uneasy calm settled over the HMS Audacity. Admiral Chen stood in her ready room, gazing out at the stars streaking by, when the door chimed softly. "Enter," she called, turning to find Princess Zora gliding into the room, her iridescent scales shimmering in the starlight. "Admiral," Zora began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "I believe it's time we had a frank discussion." Chen raised an eyebrow. "About your true reasons for insisting on a human ship and crew, Your Highness." A flicker of surprise crossed Zora's alien features. "You are as perceptive as I remember, Juliana." The use of her first name caught Chen off guard. It had been 15 years since their chance encounter, yet the memory of a curious young alien princess peppered her with questions about Earth still lingered. Zora moved to the window, her forearms clasped behind her back. "What you witnessed with the nebula entity. That is precisely why I chose humans for this journey." "I don't understand," Chen admitted. The princess turned, her eyes gleaming with an intensity that made Chen take a step back. "The hegemony has grown stagnant, set in its ways. We've explored the known galaxy, catalogued countless species, and yet, we've stopped seeing the wonder in it all." She gestured expansively. "But humans, you approach everything with fresh eyes. Where we see a navigational hazard, you see a lonely, sentient being. Your Dr. Tanaka's first instinct was to study the nebula, not flee from it. And Chief Adebayo, she communicated with a life form we didn't even know could be communicated with." Chen frowned. "So this whole trip is some kind of test?" Zara shook her head. "Not a test, Juliana. A proof of concept. I believe humanity holds the key to solving a looming threat to our entire galaxy." The Admiral's frown deepened. "What threat?" The princess hesitated, then tapped a complex sequence on her wrist device. A holographic image sprang to life between them, a spiral galaxy eerily similar to their own, but with a creeping darkness consuming its outer arms. "This," Zara said softly, "is Galaxy M104 in the Virgo cluster, or rather, it was. Our long-range sensors recorded its death throes a decade ago." Chen stared at the image, a chill running down her spine. What could cause something like that? "We don't know," Zara admitted, "but whatever it is, it's spreading, consuming galaxy after galaxy, moving ever closer to our own." The hologram shifted, showing a map of nearby galactic clusters. A wave of darkness crept across it, inexorably advancing towards the Milky Way. "The Hegemony Council is aware of this?" Chen asked, her mind reeling. Zara's expression darkened. "They are, but their solution is to fortify, to retreat into the core worlds, and abandon the outer systems to their fate. They believe our technology can save us, that we can outlast this threat." "And you disagree?" The princess nodded. I believe we need to understand this phenomenon, not hide from it. We need to approach it with new perspectives, fresh ideas. We need humanity. Chen finished, finally understanding. Precisely. Zora's eyes locked onto Chen's. Your species' greatest strength is its adaptability, its creativity in the face of the unknown. That's what we need if we're to have any hope of surviving what's coming. Chen sank into her chair, the weight of this revelation settling on her shoulders. Does the rest of my crew know about this? Zora shook her head. You're the first I told. I needed to be sure, to see humanity in action before I revealed the truth. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd learned. Finally, she looked up at the alien princess. What's our next move? A slow smile spread across Zora's face. Now, Admiral, we put your crew to the test. The nebula entity was just the beginning. I've plotted a course that will challenge your team in ways they can't imagine. Ways that I hope will prove humanity's potential to save us all. As Chen nodded her agreement, klaxons suddenly blared throughout the ship. X-427's voice came over the comm. Admiral to the bridge. We're picking up a distress signal from a nearby system. Origin unknown. Chen and Zora exchanged glances. The next challenge, it seemed, had already found them. The HMS Audacity dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder, emerging into a system dominated by a bloated red giant. Ahead, barely visible against the star's angry glow, floated a massive structure, a ring-shaped space station that dwarfed the human vessel. On the bridge, Admiral Chen leaned forward in her chair, studying the station intently. Analysis, X-427. The AI's voice was tinged with what almost sounded like awe. The structure appears to be of ancient origin, Admiral. Preliminary scans indicated predates known hegemony civilization by several million years. Princess Zara stepped forward, her scales rippling with excitement. It's the Nexus Archive, a repository of knowledge from a long-dead race. We thought it was just a myth. And the distress signal? Chen asked, her eyes never leaving the view screen. Marcus Quaid spoke up from his station, his cybernetic implants flashing. Still broadcasting, Admiral. It's coming from inside the station. Chen nodded grimly. All right, people. We're going in. Quaid, Tanaka, Sato, you're with me. Princess, I must insist you remain on the ship. Zora's eyes flashed defiantly. This is precisely why I'm here, Admiral. I'm coming with you. Before Chen could argue, klaxons blared. Proximity alert. X-427 announced. Multiple vessels entering the system. Hegemony signatures detected. Chen swore under her breath. How did they find us so quickly? It doesn't matter, Zora said urgently. We need to get to the archive before they do. Whatever activated that distress signal might be the key to stopping the galactic threat. Weighing her options, Chen made a quick decision. Fine. Princess, you're with us. Chief Adebayo, you have the bridge. Keep those ships off our backs. Minutes later, Chen led her team through the airlock and into the ancient station. The corridors were vast, their walls covered in intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to move in the corner of one's eye. Fascinating, Dr. Tanaka murmured, running her hand along the wall. These patterns, they're not decorative. I think they're some kind of data storage system. Stay focused, Chen warned. We need to find the source of that distress signal. They pressed on, deeper into the labyrinthine structure. Each chamber they passed seemed to house wonders beyond imagination. Holographic star maps of unknown galaxies, stasis pods containing bizarre alien life forms, and machines whose purpose they couldn't begin to fathom. Suddenly, Sato stopped short. Wake, he said, his eyes wide. Do you hear that? A faint humming filled the air, growing louder as they listened. The patterns on the walls began to pulse with light, racing along the corridors. It's beautiful, Zara breathed. It's a security system, Quaid corrected grimly. And I think we just triggered it. As if on cue, The floor beneath them began to shift. Walls slid apart, revealing a dizzying array of mechanical traps and energy fields. "Run!" Chen shouted, but it was too late. The floor gave way beneath them, and they plummeted into darkness. Chen landed hard. The breath knocked from her lungs. As she struggled to her feet, she realized they were in a vast, spherical chamber. At its center floated a pulsing orb of energy, tendrils of light reaching out to touch the walls. "The heart of the archive," Zara said in awe. Before they could approach, a shimmering barrier sprang to life, separating them from the orb. Alien symbols flickered across its surface. "It's a puzzle," Tanaka realized. "We have to solve it to reach the core." Chen turned to her team. "All right, people. This is what we trained for." Tanaka, analyze those symbols. Quaid, see if you can interface with any of this tech. Sato, just don't touch anything without asking first. As they set to work, Chen pulled Princess Zora aside. "You said this was a test. Well, consider this our final exam." Zara nodded solemnly. "Indeed, Admiral. And the fate of the galaxy may rest on whether humanity passes or fails." Above them, unseen, hegemony ships entered orbit around the station. Time was running out. Whatever secrets the Nexus archive held, Chen and her team would have to uncover them quickly, or risk losing them to forces that might use that knowledge to doom them all. The real challenge, it seemed, was only just beginning. The central chamber of the Nexus archive thrummed with energy, the pulsing orb at its heart casting eerie shadows across the faces of Admiral Chen and her team. Time was running out. They could hear the distant sounds of hegemony forces breaching the station's outer defenses. "Any progress?" Chen asked, her voice tense. Dr. Tanaka shook her head, frustration evident in her wild blue hair. "The symbols are like nothing I've ever seen. They shift and change faster than I can analyze them." Quaid grunted, his cybernetic implants flickering rapidly. "Same here, Admiral. This tech is so advanced, it might as well be magic." Chen turned to Sato, who was staring intently at the shimmering barrier. "Sato, any ideas?" The engineer blinked, then looked at Chen with wide eyes. It's not a puzzle, Admiral. It's a test." "Explain," Zora demanded, her scales shimmering with anticipation. Sato gestured excitedly. "Look at the patterns. They're not random. They're reacting to us, to our attempts to solve them. It's not looking for a solution. It's looking for a particular approach." Chen's eyes narrowed. "What kind of approach?" "Creativity," Sato breathed. "It wants us to think outside the box." Suddenly, the pieces fell into place. Chen turned to her team. "All right, people. Forget everything you know about alien tech. We're doing this the human way. Tanaka, stop trying to translate and start looking for patterns. Quaid, see if you can rig up some kind of visual interface with your implants. Sato, do what you do best. Get weird." As the team set to work with renewed vigor, Chen pulled Princess Zora aside. "This is it, isn't it? The real reason you wanted humans." Zara nodded solemnly. "The hegemony has become too rigid, too set in its ways. We needed a species that could look at the universe with fresh eyes." A shout from Tanaka interrupted them. "I've got something. The patterns, they're not just symbols. They're representations of different alien species' thought processes." Quaid chimed in, his eyes glowing as he projected a holographic interface. "I can see it now. It's like a giant, multidimensional Rubik's Cube of consciousness. But how do we solve it?" Chen pressed. Sato stepped forward, a manic grin on his face. "We don't. We rewrite the rules." With that, he began to dance, his movements an odd mixture of precision and chaos. To everyone's amazement, the barrier responded, its patterns shifting in time with Sato's movements. "Of course," Zara whispered, "it's not looking for a single correct answer. It's looking for the ability to adapt, to find unconventional solutions." Taking their cue from Sato, the team began to work in concert. Tanaka called out pattern shifts, while Quaid used his interface to visualize the changes. Chen and Zara added their own insights, their different perspectives merging into a unified approach. As they worked, the barrier began to pulse faster, the patterns blurring into a kaleidoscope of light and color. The orb at the center of the chamber grew brighter, tendrils of energy reaching out towards them. Suddenly, with a sound like 1,000 wind chimes, the barrier shattered. The team was bathed in warm, golden light as the orb engulfed them. In that moment, knowledge flooded their minds. The history of countless civilizations, the secrets of technologies beyond imagination, and most critically, the nature of the darkness threatening their galaxy. As the light faded, Chen found herself standing before a holographic projection of the Milky Way. A dark wave was creeping across it, consuming stars as it advanced. It's not a force, she realized aloud. It's a failsafe, a reset button for the galaxy, triggered when civilizations become too stagnant. Zara's eyes widened in understanding. And the solution is us, Chen finished. Humanity's adaptability, our creativity. It's the key to evolving beyond the need for the reset. Before they could process this revelation, Anx 427's voice crackled over their comms. Admiral, hegemony forces have breached the inner sanctum. We have minutes before they reach your position. Chen looked at her team, then at Zara. The weight of the galaxy's fate pressed down on them, but in their eyes burned a fierce determination. Well, folks, Chen said, a smile tugging at her lips, looks like it's time for humanity to do what it does best, improvise. As the sounds of approaching hegemony troops echoed through the ancient halls, Chen and her team prepared to face their greatest challenge yet. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, but for the first time since this journey began, Chen felt a spark of real hope. After all, if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was beating the odds. The corridors of the Nexus Archive echoed with the approaching footsteps of hegemony troops. Admiral Chen and her team stood at the ready, the knowledge of the galaxy's fate burning in their minds. We can't let them take this information, Chen said, her voice steely with resolve. If the hegemony learns about the reset, they'll try to control it. They'll doom us all. Princess Zara nodded grimly. Then we must ensure they don't. But how? Sato's eyes lit up with that familiar manic gleam. We don't need to fight them. We need to show them. Before anyone could question him, Sato darted to the central orb, his hands flying over its surface. The chamber filled with holographic projections, stars, planets, and swirling galaxies surrounded them in a dizzying display. What are you doing? Quaid asked, his cybernetic implants struggling to process the influx of data. Giving them a show they'll never forget, Sato grinned. As the first hegemony soldiers burst into the chamber, weapons raised, they froze in awe at the spectacle before them. Chen seized the moment. Hold your fire, she commanded, her voice ringing with authority. You're about to witness the truth of our universe. With a nod from Chen, Sato set his plan in motion. The holographic display shifted, showing the evolution of countless civilizations across the galaxy. They watched as species rose, flourished, and eventually stagnated, only to be wiped away by the encroaching darkness. This is the cycle that threatens us all, Zora explained, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. A cosmic failsafe, triggered when galactic civilizations cease to grow and adapt. The hegemony forces lowered their weapons, captivated by the unfolding story of their universe. Chen stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. But it doesn't have to be this way, she declared. Humanity has shown that adaptability, creativity, and diversity are the keys to continuous evolution. Together, we can break this cycle. Dr. Tanaka chimed in, her usual nervousness replaced by passionate conviction. Our differences are our strength. By combining the hegemony's knowledge with humanity's innovative spirit, we can forge a new path for the galaxy. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Then, to everyone's surprise, The hegemony commander stepped forward and lowered his weapon completely. "I've seen enough," he said, his alien features unreadable. "This knowledge, it changes everything. We must bring this before the Hegemony Council immediately." Over the next few hours, a flurry of communications flew between the Nexus Archive, the HMS Audacity, and the Hegemony Fleet. As the gravity of the situation became clear, old rivalries and suspicions began to fade in the face of a common purpose. Days later, Admiral Chen stood before the assembled Hegemony Council, Princess Zora at her side. The chamber was packed with representatives from every corner of the galaxy, including a sizable human delegation. "Members of the Council," Chen began, her voice carrying across the hushed room, "we stand at a crossroads. The knowledge we've gained from the Nexus Archive offers us a choice. Continue as we have and face eventual extinction, or embrace change and forge a new future together." She gestured to her diverse crew, standing proudly behind her. "Humanity doesn't claim to have all the answers, but we offer our unique perspective, our adaptability, and our unwavering determination to face the unknown. Together with the hegemony's wisdom and the myriad strengths of all galactic species, we can create a civilization that will never stagnate, one that will continue to grow, adapt, and thrive." Zara stepped forward, her scales shimmering with emotion. "As heir to the hegemony, I propose a new galactic accord. Let us combine our strengths, share our knowledge, and face the challenges of the cosmos united." A moment of tense silence followed. Then, one by one, the council members began to stand, the chamber filled with a thunderous applause that seemed to shake the very stars. As Chen looked out over the sea of diverse faces, human and alien alike, she felt a swell of pride and hope. The journey ahead would not be easy, but they would face it together. A new era of cooperation and exploration was dawning, one that promised to reshape the very fabric of galactic society. And it had all started because an alien princess said no to travel and chose a human ship instead.